Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unveiling the Truth. I'm your host, Mark Howitt, and this is episode 15 of Unveiling the Truth. We're here in 2014. It's great to still be on the Truth Broadcast Network, getting this information out to you guys and doing the show. I have a lot of great guests scheduled in the future for everybody, which is I'm really excited for actually, and I've been really planning ahead, trying to get some really interesting topics to discuss with you guys, so that some information that's not generally discussed or there's very little information about can be available to you guys, as well as piecing some of the puzzles together in my own time, doing some research, and that's what I did for this episode of Unveiling the Truth. In this episode, I'll be getting into detail about criminals in government. And there's a lot of aspects to this. There was a lot of information that I went through to try to assemble and put together for you guys to make this episode as interesting as possible. I do love to have guests on the show, but anytime that there's a subject to be discussed, I really enjoy doing that as well, just focusing on one subject for an entire episode to get as much information packed into a 2-hour episode as I possibly can. So I try to gather as much information for you guys, interesting stuff that you might not know about. Some of it you might have known about, some pieces you might not have pieced together, which is what I'm hoping. I hope that you guys do learn something from this episode. And one thing I wanted to point out is the term "turn a blind eye." Now notice that the term is blind eye, only one eye, and what that means to turn a blind eye is you see nothing, you hear nothing, and that's one of the mottos of the Freemasons for anybody who is familiar with their oaths and their I guess you would say codes of ethics. They would never rat on another Mason or tell of another Mason's wrongdoings. They protect each other through courts. There's all sorts of things that they do to protect each other, and that is one thing that they swear to, is, along with the secrecy, which is sworn in the first degree. So one thing I wanted to point out too, and I was pretty worried today actually because my computer crashed about 20 minutes before broadcasting live tonight. And I haven't really had too many problems with the computer recently, which is a good thing because I've definitely, sometimes when I'm doing a lot of research or editing videos, stuff like that, my computer does weird, strange things. But today it definitely crashed on me, got a black screen a couple times. So I was kind of worried that it might not exactly work, but I'm thankful that I let the computer sit for a while and put a lot of good thought and energy into it, and it seems to have worked. So I'm glad that I can get this broadcast to you, and I was here able to make it live. I was actually going to use a backup laptop I had if that actually happened, but that backup laptop is it's not as good as the one I'm using now anyways, and it probably would have been really hard to broadcast. I would have had to download and install all the software really quickly before going live, so I hope it doesn't resort to that, but I do have backups, thankfully, so if it's a result of it being hacked or anything like that, I'm sure I'll be all right in the end with the backup. But one thing I wanted to mention is last week, actually this past week, I did an interview on Citizens Awareness Vanguard, the radio show, and it was quite an interesting interview. And they pay for the time to be able to broadcast. So the software, essentially, some places when you do broadcast, they make you pay a fee to be able to use their software and broadcast and stuff like that. And they have an account that they pay for and everything, the host of the show. And it was Chris Perkins and Mark. I can't remember his last name offhand. I wish I could, actually. But it was great to be on their show. Chris and Mark were great guys. We had a great in-depth discussion, and I think the interview was going very, very well. But all of a sudden, it got disconnected and cut off, and they said that there was about 2,000 listeners at the time listening to the interview, and everyone was just freaking out, sending emails about it, asking what happened, and they told me that they couldn't get in their account. They just got blocked out of it all of a sudden. And during that interview, I was pressing on some pretty sensitive subject matter and just kind of, crossing my T's and dotting my I's when I was doing the interview. I think it went really well. It was very in depth, very revealing, and I guess you could say controversial, but I definitely kept on track and tried to make it as interesting as possible and connect some dots. And I did say some things that I never said on the air before, with some information that I was researching for this episode, as well as just ideas for future episodes. So that was the first time I guess I ever said stuff like that, and maybe that's why their show got disconnected. I'm not sure the reason for it, but they were pretty shocked when that happened. They said that's never happened before, and so if it's anything I said, guys, I'm sorry, but that's the way they work. They definitely try to cut you off and shut you down if you're really onto some good information. And this episode, Criminals in Government, I do plan on presenting some interesting information for sure. And hopefully this episode doesn't get banned because of some of the stuff I'll tell you guys, but look it up for yourselves. I always say, don't believe what I say, look it up yourselves, because that's the way to go. And for this episode, I had to wear this t-shirt, which I'll show you guys as best I can, but it's a picture of Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and it says, "Some crimes can put you in jail, while others can put you in government." And this shirt rings truth, especially for today's episode, because this shirt definitely rings truth. Some crimes can put you in government, and they have, and they do. That's not something that's going to stop anytime soon, I don't think, unless it's totally exposed. And anybody out there who caught the episode, Unveiling the Truth, episode number 6, which was about the alien agenda, I had to remove that video from the internet because of a Rob Ford clip that I put in it. It was one of the Reading Between the Lies segments that I made about Mayor Rob Ford and his connections to a murder in Toronto of a young man named Anthony Young, who had access to the video or had information about the video, and to silence him, he was murdered. And all this was going on during what happened with Rob Ford. And as you know, Rob Ford is the mayor of Toronto, and it seems that he has ties to organized crime or people that will murder people, hitmen in Toronto, which I know there is some. Definitely, there's a lot of people that work for both sides there, and definitely, as soon as I put that video out, it got shut down, taken down big time, and it was all because of a Jon Stewart clip that I used in it. And it was very short, the Jon Stewart clip. It was definitely within the rights of fair use, but they still made me take that video down and deleted it off of YouTube, the Mayor Rob Ford video. I posted it separately, and it was also part of the broadcast. They didn't find the segment in the broadcast right away until I posted on my Facebook page for people to check it out, because I think that they were trying to silence me on that. So more people went to episode 6 and watched it on YouTube on the Unveiling the Truth channel, and then all of a sudden it gets taken down. So somebody's reading my Facebook account and monitoring my posts and cross-referencing information, complaining, doing whatever they can to shut down some of the material that I'm presenting, which is a good sign. I think if that's not happening to you, then you are presenting information, but it's probably information that other people are revealing or presenting. Some of the stuff I try to present has never been presented before. So that's one thing I try to do, is try to present original information and connect some dots that haven't been connected before, just to try to paint the bigger picture for people and the viewers out there. And I do thank all you viewers and the people who stick around in the chat room. I said today on the chat that I'll try to be monitoring the chat room more and keeping in touch and interacting with everybody more. Now that I don't have a guest today, it's a bit easier to do so, because when I have guests on, I really like to pay attention to what they're saying and listen to them as much as possible. So it is hard for me to reference with the chat room. But today, anybody who wants to have any suggestions, I'm seeing some suggestions for shows, anything like that, shoot it in the chat room. Anybody has any questions or anything, anybody who wants to post any links in relation to what I'm talking about on today's show as well, post that in the chat room, and I'll try to play the video if it's relating to what I'm talking about. But I do have a lot of information to present here. Right now, my notes are kind of scattered because I was just ripping through it and trying to gather as much information as possible. But one thing that's been in the news lately, and I really want to bring this up first, is something that's just totally unjust. And this coincides with criminals in government, because the governmental system within a community exists due to, you know, the legal system, the financial system, the political structure there. There's all sorts of elements that make a community exist, essentially, and a lot of them are politically related, if not directly, indirectly politically related. So that's why you have all these government organizations. A lot of funding goes into non-government groups. There's all sorts of funding that goes into it. It's based around money, a lot of it. But the legal system is a big one there, and anybody who's been watching the news lately is probably aware of the Kelly Thomas incident. Now, that's something that I really want to talk about here on the show today because it links directly to criminals and government. For anybody who's not aware of what happened, I found a really good video by a group called Cop Block, and anybody could check that out. I know they have a website on their YouTube channel. They're posting videos always. They're monitoring police activities, and when they're unjust, they try to expose that to the public. It's a really great site for that. So I recommend that site, Cop Block, for sure. But there's a video that I want to show you guys that's just totally insane. I mean, I'm sure this has got a lot of play in the media and stuff like that. But and this is an older crime, what happened. But more recently, the police officers were let off their charges. What essentially happened is police beat a man to death and went through the court process and got off. So what that's saying is you can get away with murder if you are working for interest for the government, essentially. The legal system, the government, all that stuff is connected. The police are there to serve the public, yes, but they ultimately have to, respond to the government. That's who they're the armed force of the government, essentially. When things go wrong in the community, they're sent to do their job and take care of things. I'm not saying all cops are bad. Definitely not, because there is a lot of cops that are good and do the right thing. And for the most part, police serve a specific purpose in the community, which I find is good. I mean, if I was getting beaten to death on the side of the road, I'd hope somebody would call the police and they would come and help me out. But with what happened with Kelly Thomas is just insane. Now I'm going to play this video that Cop Block made because it's very important to show you guys this case and how insane this is. This is pure insanity, but this is the world we're living in, and this has been going on for quite some time, and that's why I think it's really important to point out, and something needs to be done about it for sure. But without further ado, here's that video from Cop Block.
Put your hands on your knees. No. See my fist? Yeah, what about him? He's getting ready to fuck you up.
This entire incident was characterized by example after example of substandard police conduct, clear violations of police policy, causing this routine matter to escalate into violence. And that violence was such that it resulted in such severe trauma to Kelly Thomas that it caused his death. The conduct of these two officers who are on trial here went far beyond anything that's acceptable in a free society. This is an important case. It's an important case.
Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty.
July 5th, 2011, around 8:30 p.m. Jeanette DeMarco, a manager at Slide Bar, called the Fullerton Police non-emergency number. She reported that a shirtless guy with a backpack was peering into cars in the parking lot. The Fullerton police outfit was only a few blocks away. A response didn't take long. Manny Ramos, 37 years old, who had worked for the Fullerton police outfit for a decade, was the first to arrive. He approached the man matching the description. That man was Kelly Thomas, 37 years old, homeless, and diagnosed with schizophrenia. Soon a second Fullerton police employee, 39-year-old Joseph Wolf, arrived and stood opposite Ramos. The interaction was video recorded on a surveillance camera and audio recorded on a digital audio recorder, or DAR, worn on the belt of the Fullerton police employees. This wasn't the first time Ramos and Thomas met. In fact, there were at least 7 documented interactions between the pair. During one of their more recent exchanges, when Ramos had ordered Thomas to move, Ramos asked him if he understood English. Thomas replied that he didn't. Thus, on this night, Ramos questioned what languages Thomas spoke.
You wanna know what
Clearly, Ramos knew who he was interacting with. Eventually, Ramos asked Thomas if his name was Kelly Thomas, and Thomas confirmed that it was.
It's Kelly Thomas. Isn't it Kelly Thomas? Yeah. Kelly Thomas?
Wolf asked Thomas about his backpack, and Thomas offered him to let him search it.
You got anything in your backpack that's got your name on it?
No, why? Did you want to search it and stuff?
If you don't mind.
Ramos told Thomas to sit on the curb, to put his legs out in front of him, to cross his ankles, and to put his hands on his knees. Wolf took the bag and searched it just outside of the camera angle. They went back and forth for a little bit, but didn't have much dialogue. Ramos' nonverbals, standing with his legs crossed and engaged in banter with a passerby, clearly communicated that he did not feel threatened by Thomas. After about 8 minutes, Ramos walked over to Wolf at the back of the police vehicle.
He's got mail for an attorney.
Wolf showed Ramos 2 letters addressed to somebody else that had been in Thomas's backpack. He suggested that Thomas be brought in for suspicion of 496, receiving stolen property. Note that it was later revealed that Thomas had taken those letters out of the trash.
So I'm thinking suspicion of 496.
Ramos returned to Thomas. Remember, Ramos and Wolf were there due to a call from the manager at Slide Bar, yet he and his colleague never attempted to make contact with her to get a statement. Instead, it seemed Ramos had other intentions.
Feet out in front of you. Feet out in front of you. I'm not fucking around anymore. You're trying to be nice. Yeah.
He put on a pair of latex gloves, held his fists in front of Thomas, and asked, "Now do you see my fists? They're getting ready to fuck you up."
Put your hands on your fucking knees. Put your feet out in front of you.
Well, which one is it, dude?
Both.
I can't do both.
Well, you're gonna have to do it real quick. Put your hands on your knees.
No.
See my fist?
Yeah, what about him?
It's getting ready to fuck you up.
Ramos started tugging on Thomas. Thomas stood up, obviously scared. Ramos approached, his baton held in both hands like a baseball bat. Thomas backpedaled and put his arms up in protest.
Well, hey, I'm sick of playing games. Which one is it?
Put your fucking hands on your knees.
Would you just fucking put your hands?
Would you just fucking...
All right.
Get on the ground now. Get on the ground. Get on the ground.
Ramos and Wolf ran towards Thomas. Wolf swung his baton and hit Thomas in the leg. At this point, Thomas had the right to use force to defend himself against this unjust initiation of force against him.
I can't fucking breathe. I can't, dude. Please help him.
Yet Ramos and Wolf had just begun, and they called their colleagues for assistance. Soon there were 6 Fullerton police employees partaking in the beating of Thomas.
I'm sorry. Ouch. Joe. Joe, go to your right.
Hey.
Go to your right.
I'm
Joe,
sorry.
Hold up.
Ow. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry, dude. Ow.
Right here.
Thomas was pinned to the pavement. He couldn't move if he wanted to. Cicinelli tased him repeatedly, then he used his taser to bash in Thomas's skull.
He's getting his arm up there high so he can take a real blow down onto Kelly Thomas's face.
The 8 blows from the taser broke Thomas's nose, shattered bones under his left eye and in his sinuses, and caused hemorrhaging in his eye.
God help me.
A vicious attack, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of police employees on his chest, blood running into his throat and nose. Thomas lost consciousness. Afterward, when Thomas lay still in a pool of his blood, Cicinelli proclaimed, "I just probably smashed his face to hell."
We ran out of options, so I got the end of my taser, and I just probably smashed his face to hell.
He must have been on something, the police employees proclaimed, as if to justify their heavy-handedness.
He was on something, dude. He went on a fight over there, and we fought him over there. He was on something.
Yet toxicology reports found that Thomas had no alcohol or drugs in his system. Had it crossed the minds of those who killed Thomas that perhaps he may have been struggling for his life? Eventually, EMS arrived. Fullerton Fire Department personnel later stated that the police employees were first to receive attention, as Thomas lay ignored nearby, struggling to breathe.
Hey, Manny, look at your arm, dude. Or you want to wipe? I don't know. You want to wipe that arm? Yeah.
Eventually, Thomas was put on a backboard.
You get his head? I got his head. Okay.
He was brought to St. Jude's Hospital, where a breathing tube was inserted. Then he was brought to the trauma center at UC Irvine. 5 days later, Thomas was taken off life support. He died on July 10th, 2011.
Well, the man named Kelly Thomas was sitting on a bench when he was approached by two lawmen. Resisting arrest, they beat him down to the floor. He cried out for help, so they beat him down some more.
A couple of days after the brutal attack, the Orange County District Attorney's Office announced that it was investigating the incident. Based on past experiences, many thought that this would amount to nothing, that it was just window dressing. The official line from the Fullerton police outfit:
there were probably at least 6 officers there trying to subdue Mr. Thomas, having great difficulty in subduing him while they were trying to take him into custody.
The corporate media didn't question them.
Police say they received a call, someone breaking into cars. Officers allege they talked with Thomas, but when they tried to arrest him, Thomas, at 5'10", 165 pounds, fought back.
Fortunately, Ron Thomas, Kelly Thomas's father, took pictures of Thomas when he was in the hospital. Those pictures and coverage from a local blog, Friends for Fullerton's Future, meant that the actions of Ramos and his crew weren't going to be brushed under the rug. When the truth started to get out that a half dozen Fullerton police employees had beaten to death a mentally ill man, many in the community were outraged, and rightly so. They mobilized. They adopted the monkey or Kelly's Army. Their goal was to hold the killer cops and those covering for them responsible for their actions.
If you or I did this, we'd go to prison for murder. That's exactly what needs to happen to these group of rogue officers. They need to go to prison for murder.
The police dragged their feet.
Did the other officers implicate their colleagues at all in their reports, the ones that were not charged?
Pretty much, it's like I said, they certainly didn't indicate any kind of knowledge of any unlawful conduct or excessive force or anything of that nature.
There is clearly collusion between the city leadership, the police force management, which is not union, and the union leadership.
It came to light that Andrew Goodrich, the Fullerton Police Public Information Officer, the face of the police outfit, who earned over $130,000 a year in that capacity, was also very active with the Fullerton Police Officers Association, the police union. Conflict of interest? Less than 2 weeks after the incident, people took to the streets and voiced their concerns outside the Fullerton police outfit. There was no ignoring the groundswell. By the end of the month, the FBI had announced it was investigating the death of Kelly Thomas for possible civil rights violations. The city council did nothing, but perhaps that's not too surprising considering the fact that one of the members, Pat McKinley, was a former Fullerton police chief, taking home over $200,000 a year in pensions.
When people say there were 6 people beating on one guy, you can't get 6 people around one guy. You start hitting each other.
Hoping to avoid a lawsuit, City of Fullerton personnel reached out to Ron Thomas and offered him $900,000 settlement. Critics called it hush money. Ron refused. A post and video made by Anonymous made more people aware of the unjust situation and promised to upset City of Fullerton websites and communications unless the situation was rectified. On September 21, 2011, charges were levied by Orange County DA Tony Rakakis against Manny Ramos and Jay Cicinelli.
I'm charging Officer Manuel Ramos with second-degree murder, 1 felony count of second-degree murder. And I'm also charging Officer Ramos with 1 felony count of involuntary manslaughter. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of 15 years to life in state prison. Corporal Jay Cicinelli is charged with 1 felony count of involuntary manslaughter and 1 felony count of the use of excessive force. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of 4 years in state prison.
The police community, rather than ostracize the actions of those involved with the death of Thomas, opened their wallets in support of them. In May of 2012, Kathy Thomas, Kelly's mom, accepted a $1 million settlement with the city and agreed not to pursue any further claims. As she and Thomas's father, Ron Thomas, were divorced, that settlement did not affect his suit against the city. That month, after being twice postponed, the preliminary hearing happened. In June of 2012, 3 Fullerton City Council members were recalled: Pat McKinley, the former chief, Don Bankhead, and Dick Jones. On July 3, 2012, after being on paid suspension for almost a year, Manny Ramos was fired from the Fullerton police outfit. 2 days later, on the anniversary of Thomas Kelly's beating, Ron Thomas filed suit alleging that the city of Fullerton ignored citizens' complaints and failed to discipline officers accused of wrongdoing, creating a culture of corruption and deliberate indifference. By the end of July, both Joseph Wolf and Jay Cincinnelli were also fired from the Fullerton police outfit. In August, Fullerton Police Chief Michael Sellers, who many had called out for his inaction, went on medical leave. He remained on medical leave, collecting a salary, for 7 months before finally stepping down. In late 2012, Joseph Wolf was arraigned on 1 felony count of involuntary manslaughter and 1 felony count of excessive use of force. No charges have been filed against the other Fullerton police employees on the scene that night. The trial against Ramos and Cicinelli was set to begin in October 2013, though it didn't kick off until December 2nd. Before prosecutor Tony Rakakis showed the video of the incident to the jury, he told them, "As you watch, you realize that what you're watching and hearing is a person dying at the hands of the police. You're watching a homicide." The defense, led by John Barnett, claimed that Ramos had given a lawful order, so that the force he and his colleagues used was necessary to gain compliance.
They did as they were told. They did as they were taught.
He attributed the cause of death not to something directly done by the Fullerton police employees, but due to Thomas's enlarged heart, damaged from previous meth use. He brought in an expert witness, a doctor named Stephen Karch, who backed this scenario. Yet Dr. Matthew Budoff, a program director for cardiology at Harbor UCLA Medical Center, who reviewed CAT scans and x-rays of Thomas's heart, said there's no evidence of heart failure. Indeed, the Orange County coroner's report found that Thomas died of brain damage due to asphyxiation caused by mechanical compression of the thorax. In layman's terms, the weight of the cops on Thomas's chest made it impossible for him to breathe. On Tuesday, January 7, 2014, over a month after the trial began, closing arguments kicked off. 2 days later, the jury began deliberation. On Monday, July 13, 2014, the jury returned not guilty verdicts on all charges. Is that justice? Of course not. Government courts are structured to protect government actors. So what should be done? I don't pretend to know, but I do know it won't happen until we each stop looking to the police as authorities and cast aside our blind faith in the coercive monopoly of the criminal's justice system. Badges don't grant extra rights. A gang of 6 killed Thomas Kelly. They should be held accountable.
That is what happened to Kelly Thomas. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't know about this story, but it needs to be told. I mean, people need to know when people are getting away with murder, and that's exactly what's happening. It's not exactly turning a blind eye in this case, but some of them did. I mean, these people got off because of the legal system, because of the government structure that controls the legal system. They've been allowed to get away with it. Now, whether these people are Freemasons or have connections with that, and that's why they were allowed to get off, I really don't know. Perhaps these policemen are involved in other activities, organized crime, something like that. Maybe that's why they got off. There's got to be a reason why they got away with this, because it's just totally unjust. And I think that cop block video really explains it very well. Anybody out there, subscribe to their page, check them out. They got a great page going with lots of good reports, and they definitely did a good one there, which summed up a lot of what happened, and as well as the aftermath, because this happened a while ago. So it's nothing new, essentially, but people are only starting to hear about it now because of the unjust ruling that the courts gave these police officers who literally murdered somebody. I mean, you saw it yourselves. That's murder, in my opinion, definitely. There's no other word for what happened there except murder. So for anybody just tuning into the broadcast, today's subject is criminals in government. I've got a lot of information here still to go through, but I definitely thought that the Kelly Thomas thing needed to be mentioned because it's so recent, and as well as it ties in with what I'm going to be discussing with you. Because on countless occasions, people who are complicit with crimes, who are guilty of crimes, the evidence supports it. Either the evidence goes missing, reports go missing, people end up dead, murdered, assassinated, you name it. And this has been happening for quite some time now. And like I said earlier at the beginning of the broadcast, turning a blind eye, that's one eye remember, it's not turning blind eyes, it's turning a blind eye, and there's a reason for that, a definite reason for that. And as I mentioned before as well, I discovered a bit of information. I kind of pieced together some things that I've never seen pieced together before, with a lot of recent histories, more notable crimes, essentially, where there's a lot of questionable aspects in regards to what happened, and a number comes up, a number keeps popping up, and this Kelly Thomas incident is no exception to that. The official released video of the beating that was released, that people can see, the timing of that is 33 minutes and 33 seconds. So that's a curious number. But I knew something before I even discovered that, and that was that a lot of these crimes have the number 33 involved with it. There's a lot of crimes that I've been able to discover and piece together that have the number 33 as a significant number within it. And I'm going to go through those with you guys right now. This is something I've never seen pieced together before, so I'm glad to get this information out to you guys. I know there's a lot more that I've probably missed that I haven't really looked into, but I'm sure if people out there want to do some extra work, look into this and look into it for themselves to try to find out some more instances, then I definitely think that there's going to be a lot more. But the number 33 comes up all over the place. In 1933, the Nazi party essentially came to power as Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, which indicated the birth of the Third Reich. So 1933, also in 1933, Roscoe Fadi Arbuckle, who was a silent actor, a black and white movie actor, was charged with the murder. This is in 1921. He was charged with the murder of a woman after a shocking orgy that apparently happened, and he was charged and convicted of the murder. But after 3 trials, he got away with it. And in 1933, he signed a film contract with, I believe, Universal Studios, and so in 1933 his crime got unpunished. He got away with it. In 1966, Charles Whitman, who many of you know is a sniper at the University of Texas, he was an ex-Marine. He killed 15 and injured 33. So the number 33 pops up there as well. In 1978, John Wayne Gacy, who many of you know as Pogo the Clown, they discovered several bodies of young boys and young males in his basement in the United States, and he was essentially charged with the rape, torture, and murder and dismemberment and burying bodies of 33 young boys and children. So that's another one. In that case, there is very questionable. He stated in interviews, John Wayne Gacy, that he gave his key out, that a lot of people had access to that house. It wasn't just him that had the house. It was more like a workhouse where employees of his, he ran labor jobs and construction and renovations and stuff like that. He ran a business doing that, and that's how he came into contact with these young boys and young men. And a lot of them started going missing, etc. And then they found in his crawl space in his basement, they found these bodies buried, as well as one in his garage, and it amounted to 33. But the thing is, he claims that the keys to his house were available to like 12 other people. So 12 other people had access to that house. The house could have been a ditch spot for children who were raped and abused. And one thing that I've been really researching in lately is the child trafficking, human trafficking, and abductions of children and stuff like that. Now, this is it's reality. I mean, a lot of people want to ignore it and stuff, but just look at the royalty, the royal family. I mean, I can't remember his name offhand, but he was from the UK. I watched a film on him, and I can't believe I'm not remembering it right now off the top of my head, his name, but he was very good friends with the royal family, and he rose to power. Essentially, he was able to go onto a prison with young inmates and stuff, but he was charged with molesting, and there was also some strange murders that happened in the UK on this island, where there was bodies of children found in a hospital, and they did an investigation on it and stuff like that, and then they started seeing that it was a very Masonic town. I mean, very Masonic. The symbolism everywhere, and also the ITCCS, the International Tribunal Against Crimes of Church and State, held a trial essentially and found some people were complicit, were guilty of ritual abuse. There's a woman who came forth and testified. There's a video of her out there that you could check out. She's from Holland in the Netherlands, and she was reporting on these children that were essentially going missing, well, not going missing, but they were raped and tortured and killed. She witnessed murders, and she was one of them. She was a sex slave, essentially. She was, from a very young age, she was brought to Freemason rituals. She claims that they were Freemason rituals that she was involved with, and she was like used as an abuse victim, really. Like they would, with the members of the Masons that were involved in doing this, they all had to take part of it. They all had to get their hands dipped in blood so that they're all guilty of what was going on. So they took turns, and those who didn't rape had to do some other gruesome things, and that's the way they did it, essentially, to keep their secrecy. That's what they do. They make you do something very bad so that you can't talk about it, and if you do, that's when they get you. And that's why you see all these weird instances happening, and you hear all these weird stories about children being trafficked and kidnapped, and there's a huge business for that, and that's one of the reasons why. There's a lot of information out there about it. Some of it's not so good, some of it is good, and that's something that I've really been looking into lately, because that's a huge crime, and I think that it needs to be dealt with if we can expose these rings of disgusting, vile human beings that should not even be allowed to exist on this earth because of what they're doing to other human beings, and they're thinking it's fine. I mean, these children are being raised, being tortured and abused and sexually raped, and all this stuff is happening to them when they're younger, and they grow up and they think it's normal, and it just shatters their mind. I mean, look at some of Fritz Springmeier's discussions and seminars about how they fracture your mind, they compartmentalize your mind, and that's the way they can control you and trigger you and stuff like that. So that was very disgusting stuff that I've been looking into lately. That's just pretty disturbing. But again, 33 boys and young men at John Wayne Gacy's house. In 1978, Jonestown occurred with Reverend Jim Jones, who has known ties to the CIA. That's definitely out there, the information. I want to do an episode just on Jonestown to discuss the CIA's involvement with that operation. It was a massive operation, a PSYOP, where it was like a test, like a human experiment with a culture, a community, and Jim Jones was put in charge of that, and that's why he tried to get away. And there's there's an agent there, CIA agent, with him. There's all sorts of things with that. But with Reverend Jim Jones, 33 people escaped with their lives. So that's another indicator right there, that only 33 survivors out of the 900 and I think it was over 1,000 actually afterwards of people that killed themselves. Now the media says that they drank Kool-Aid, but a lot of these people were found with bullet holes in their back. So that goes to show you that they were all killed off, so nobody could talk. The people that did escape, there is survivors out there that did escape. Some of them are disinformationalists, and other ones are legitimate, but whether you get good information out of them is hard to say. That's definitely something that Jones definitely had some CIA ties there. So 33 people escaped with their lives. In 1993, Waco, Texas, David Koresh was 33 years old when he was killed on site by the ATF and other government agencies. They went in there, they killed the Branch Davidians. That was another big one. So David Koresh was 33 years old during the siege. Now, another important one around the same time, just 1 year later, I believe, O.J. Simpson was charged. He went to trial for the murder of his wife, Nicole, and also Ron Goldman. Ron Goldman was the other victim that was there. Now, after the trial, as you know, O.J. Simpson got away with it. He didn't get charged with the murder or anything, despite that there was a lot of evidence, and he was being chased by police in the white Ford Bronco, that infamous scene that everybody knows about. So there's that. But the funny thing is the Goldman family was awarded. Simpson was ordered to pay $33 million to the Goldman family after the trial. And then in 2008, when O.J. Simpson was arrested for the robbery of sports memorabilia in a Las Vegas casino, I believe it was a casino or a hotel, but there was a sports show going on, and he wanted to steal back some of his autographed memorabilia because I don't know why he did that, but that was in 2008, and he received 33 years sentence. So O.J. Simpson, 33. A lot of people think that he was a Mason. I'm going to have to dig this up to try to find out if he was, because if so, that's in your face right there. 33 and 33, both the same guy. That's in your face. Oklahoma City bombing. Timothy McVeigh executed by lethal injection in 2001 at the age of 33. And that's another one, age 33. Virginia Tech, 32 victims. And plus Sung Hyu Cho, the guy who apparently did this, killed himself at the end of it, making it 33 victims at Virginia Tech massacre. And then, as we watched, the Kelly Thomas beating video, the full one is 33 minutes, 33 seconds. So the number 33 pops up in all these cases. Some of them are questionable cases, big time, where you're like, you know, that didn't happen the way we've been told. The media lied to us about it or construed some facts. I mean, what's going on here, right? That's what a lot of people must be asking themselves. What is going on here? How could these cops be allowed to get away with murder? How could all these people be allowed to get away with murder? That's the big question. How could these people commit? I mean, I would say it's the worst crime that you could do to somebody else is kill them, take their life away, take their freedom away, and their family would be losing them and missing these people. Yet they're killed. So that's a severe crime. I mean, next to genocide or, you know, mass murder with or war or stuff like that, colonization and stuff. I think murder is definitely the worst crime, because all those other crimes involve murder for them to be committed in the first place. So when people are getting away with murder, that deserves some attention. You really got to look into that, because it's highly questionable on why they're allowed to do this. And there's a reason for it. There has to be a reason for it. Absolutely. There has to be a reason for it. So I've been trying to gather some information for you guys, which shows other examples of this happening. And there's been a lot. I mean, Mayor Rob Ford, a lot of people just say that he was, the video of him smoking crack or whatever is why the media attention was on him. But what was ignored was the man that was murdered. So that needs to be looked into as well, big time. But throughout history, I mean, we've seen the government get away with some insane things, and all the evidence is there. You know, if there was evidence that could trace somebody to the crime, it's always incinerated or burned. Nowadays, they don't even keep a paper trail. All those CIA documents you see, or FBI that have become declassified, well, that's questionable, you know what I mean? Because if they've had access to these files for so many years, they could easily burn these files, destroy these files so that there is no paper trail, and then release a bit of information to the public, which is what they do. They also black out entire paragraphs on their government documents so that the information will remain secret and nobody will know about it. JFK is a big one. Everybody. I mean, it's reaching critical mass now. For the amount of people that do not believe the official story. I mean, we've even got major news agencies reporting on all of the evidence and stuff like that now. So, really, we all know what's going on. There is certain elements of government. We all know that they're getting away with certain crimes and they're being allowed to. If you look at what's happening in the world, other crimes against humanity, for instance, the starvation that's allowed to occur, while banks get bailed out for trillions of dollars and people are starving in other places in the world to death. I mean, that's neglect, human neglect right there. You've got genetically modified foods and fluoride in the water, and you've got all these contaminants that we're consuming. That also is soft kill techniques. I mean, it's making us sick, it's killing us off. That is a crime, but it's being allowed to happen. So there's a lot of crimes that are being allowed to happen, crimes against humanity at that, and nothing's being done about it. So we need to focus on why. Why is nothing being done about it? I mean, there's got to be evidence or something that we can say, yes, this is the definitive reason why that's happening. And whether they lie in the chambers of some secret society or in the chambers of some courtroom, I mean, the truth is there. It will be found one day, and the truth will set us free, which is why people like myself and others do intensive research to try to find out what's going on here and try to solve the problem, you know, that these people shouldn't be allowed to get away with murder. But the truth of the matter is that the government has been allowed to do this for so long because they go unchecked. And they also have special statuses. I mean, one of them could be, is definitely the diplomatic immunity. When you have diplomatic immunity, you're essentially protected in other countries. But, I mean, it doesn't matter because you need to be essentially trialed in your own country unless there's crimes that you've committed in another country. Now, George Bush Jr., a lot of people know this, but a lot of people don't, but he's wanted for war crimes in other countries. And even in Canada, I believe he tried to come to the west coast of Canada, and they protested it big time. They were going to arrest him here when he came here. And you don't see his face too much anymore because he knows that he's a wanted war criminal for crimes against humanity that he's committed, that he oversaw. And it's the same pattern as his father. His father was in power before him, George Bush Sr., and he also is a criminal. He was in charge. He worked for the CIA, which everybody knows. He has definite ties with the JFK assassination, but also the Iran-Contra scandal, bringing cocaine into the United States and selling it to people, and allowing it to be sold through Freeway Ricky Ross. So that's happening there. You've got these people who are in high positions of power continuously, different administrations in a row even, have been allowed to get away with crimes one after another. So what's going on here? I mean, are we not seeing this? Are we not being able to point this out and say, look, this is crazy? Well, we do. We have. But a lot of people's cries, and when they do point this stuff out, are silenced. They're shut down. You can't talk about this stuff. I mean, it's very sensitive, especially when you start naming names, and these people are, in fact, guilty, because that is indefinite proof that they deserve to go to jail for what they did. Really, that's the minimum that they should get, is imprisonment. But these people think they're gods. They think that they can get away with anything, and they will continue to do so until people like you and I stand up and say enough is enough. That's why we make broadcasts like this, to get information like what happened to Kelly Thomas out there. Cop Block's covering it. Even some major news agencies are starting to cover it, because people are outraged about this. And that's what's needed. I mean, not just for the instance with Kelly Thomas, but even things in the past. I mean, George Bush Sr. is still alive. George Bush Jr. is still alive, so we should hold them accountable as well. There's all sorts of people that should be held accountable. But what these snakes do is they wait until they're dead. And then the truth comes out. Then the documents are released, if there is any left. Then we learn about what really happened. Only when the guy's dead. I mean, that's how they get away with it. They just push it off. When the person's dead, okay, maybe a few years later we'll release the truth about what really happened. That's so that these people can't serve a day of time incarcerated for the crimes that they committed. Now, not just George Bush Jr., not just George Bush Sr., but also remember Nixon, the Watergate scandal. He resigned because the public just were outraged, you know what I mean? He lied to everybody. He lied to the world. And who was caught for that? Well, there were CIA agents that were caught as the plumbers, as they're called. The burglars for Watergate were called the plumbers. And you got agents like Frank Sturgis, who is a CIA asset, as well as E. Howard Hunt, another CIA asset. So you've got CIA agents working with the President of the United States, going into the building, stealing the files, all sorts of crimes, really, on what happened. And what did Frank Sturgis serve in prison? 14 months. Then he was out. Just over a year in prison for the Watergate scandal, and he's out. Why? Because he's a CIA agent. That's why. Because when you're CIA, you can get away with anything. And one thing I'd like to point out here in the broadcast is, if you're a CIA agent, you essentially have to have a background in doing some heartless things. I mean, you don't have to. If you don't have that in you, then you would be on a computer working for the CIA, or you would be, administering systems, or being a truck repairman, or, being an online investigator, or whatever you're going to do. But if you've got it in your heart to murder somebody, or you work with organized crime organizations, let's just say, and you've murdered people before, and you've got, access to that money, power, that's another reason. And the CIA and the mob have been in bed together for many years. Many, many, many years. I want to show you guys a great book, which has a lot of good good info in it, and that's Little Man, Meyer Lansky, and the Gangster Life. Now, Meyer Lansky, some of you guys may know who he is. Some of you may not. But he essentially worked with the mob, the Italian mob, but he was of Jewish origin. He was a Jewish gangster, really. And you hear about that a lot, especially in the New York area, Jewish gangsters. You've got the rapper Necro singing about it. You've got a lot of people singing about that because the Jewish mafia exists. It's something that's growing huge. And Meyer Lansky, actually, after he had warrants for his arrest, he escaped America. Well, he tried to escape. He went to Israel to live there. And they wouldn't let him stay there, really, because they found out that he had ties to organized crime. So he left, but I believe he was eventually allowed to return there later on. But one thing that's interesting to point out is they only went after him really when they had really good evidence against him, because he got away with a lot of things. In fact, during World War II, because of Meyer Lansky's ties with organized crime, he helped protect the harbor in the east of America, in New York area and stuff like that. He helped protect the docks clear from any threats, any outside threats. So he was working directly with the military. I believe it was the Navy, the United States Navy intelligence, to keep the docks safe. So that's the mob working together with the army. Proof of that. Also, afterwards, after World War II, he went to Cuba. This was shortly after. He went to Cuba and he opened up casinos. He opened up gambling rackets there. And he had a lot of money invested. He even opened up a hotel, which is still standing in Cuba. The hotel's still there. And I believe it's the most well-visited hotel in Cuba. Still. So, and they did tear it down, though, when Castro went in there. And they destroyed the gambling racket, which really upset the mob, as well as the government, obviously, because the government tried to kill him so many times with the help of the mob again. So you've got the mob working with the government, rogue factions of the government, CIA, and these guys are the nastiest people you could ever think of on the planet. Like, these guys who are, apparently patriots, are really cold-blooded murderers with no conscience, no soul. They'll do anything for a buck. That's why they're doing it, to get rich, to get powerful. Money, 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 money. That's all these people care about. That's why they do it. And money will corrupt a lot of people, you know what I mean? That's what it does. But Lansky went to Cuba and set up all these casinos, and he worked directly with President Batista, who Castro overthrew. The rebels came down from the mountains and overthrew Batista's government. And when Castro overtook Cuba and threw out Batista, he expelled the casinos and mobsters, and this took essentially Meyer Lansky's fortune away. He had a lot of money invested in there. He sunk a lot of money into that new hotel he was making and all that stuff, but he lost all his money, so that really angered him. And then you have the mob working directly with the CIA for the Bay of Pigs invasion, which didn't go over very well. A lot of prisoners were caught. A lot of people were caught in the process of trying to get into Cuba and overthrow Castro. But one thing that's very important to point out as well is Frank Sturgis, who was one of the Watergate burglars, as well as ties to the JFK assassination, as well as other operations through the CIA, was also working with Castro. He was a double agent, essentially. He was in charge of Castro's military, his air force, I believe. He was in charge of that. So he would report to the CIA about what Castro was doing and stuff like that. So they had inside guys in there all the time to try to overthrow Castro. And there's a really good documentary out there about Fidel Castro, and I believe it's called the Fidel Castro, The Untold Story. Anybody who doesn't know too much about this, check that documentary out. It really explains a lot about Fidel Castro's life and the history of things and why all that happened, really. But Richard Nixon, president, was in charge of Watergate. What happened to him? He died a happy man. I wouldn't say happy, but he didn't serve any time. You know what I mean? He didn't get punishment for what he did. And 14 months prison for Frank Sturgis is definitely not a lot either. So you've got slaps on the wrist happening. And that's what's going to happen. These people are just going to keep getting slapped on the wrist for doing this stuff because there's not enough people that know about what's really going on and know where to look for this stuff to figure out if there's evidence there, etc., etc. So I'm just going off these notes here to try to get some stuff. I know there's a couple articles I want to show you guys as well that are very important that tie in with a lot about what I'm saying here. Some of you are aware about a guest that I had on. Well, actually, first, before I get into this, I'm going to go to another topic here first, actually. I should cover this. Jim Fetzer, I know some of you guys know who he is, but Jim Fetzer, he writes for Veterans Today. He's got a blog show. He's got a few things going on anyways, but he wrote a couple very interesting articles, and I want to get them on screen here and show you guys and go through them with you. There's also audio recordings of phone call conversations that he had, but I'm going to read this article here just to show you guys what I'm talking about. And this is another instance of people in government turning a blind eye. That's the word of the episode, I guess. Turning the blind eye, because it's one eye that's turning. There you go. But here we have it. Now this article is on Veterans Today, Military and Foreign Affairs Journal. And it says, bank robbers and serial killers. The CIA recruits them. The FBI ignores them. And comments on this article here. It's a quite extensive article with lots of interesting details that aren't really generally discussed too often. I think Jim did some digging here for sure. But comments are closed. And I'll show you why afterwards. But here we go. When you dig into conspiracies like JFK and 9/11, as I have done, and host a radio program discussing them, you cannot always predict how things are going to play out. Several years ago, for example, I began to hear from a woman who used the handle Agent Ladybug, which sounds innocuous on its face, but where the story she had to tell, it has gradually unwoven, would make your hair curl. If what she has been telling me is correct, and to my ear it has the ring of truth, then she has been associating with one or more serial killers who may even have been involved in crimes as serious as the assassinations of JFK, MLK, RFK, and even John F. Kennedy Jr. The persons she has identified to me include her own brother, Roland Otis, for whom she introduced the name Raoul and told me he had been involved in the death of Martin Luther King. She also explained that another member of this gang, although she has not used that word, was photographed in front of the Cuban embassy in Mexico City, where even J. Edgar Hoover himself acknowledged that this person was not the man accused of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. According to my source, it was actually Walter Tabinski, and the most dangerous of these three, Clyde Forshaw, has committed serial murders, if her information is correct, some of which she personally witnessed herself. I grant that her story is difficult to believe, but she has a mountain of details and other considerations to back it up. So, this woman calls Jim Fetzer, and they have conversations on the phone about these people that she's claiming have ties to these organizations. Now, she resides in Toronto, so that's really close to my home here. Toronto is pretty close, you know what I mean? But she's reported these crimes, but to no avail. So nobody's listening to her story on what's going on. But on the FBI's most wanted list, Vaulting Bandit is one guy, and there's also the Geezer Bandit here. These people were on the FBI's most wanted list because they're committing robberies in Canada, in Ontario apparently, in or around here, as well as the United States. So that's why they're wanted by the FBI. Now, conversations with his source, Jim Fetzer recorded the conversations that he had with her. You guys can listen to these conversations if you want. I'm not going to play them on the show here right now, But I wanted to point this article for you guys so that you guys could have the access to further information about this. But what he did after he was extremely disturbed that these guys were getting away with murder and she was her brother was one of them, he submitted a tip to them saying that he has information that should lead to the identification of the Geezer Bandits, who is also the vaulting bandit and who has robbed several banks. I have photographs and information about him. He is extremely dangerous and, if my source is correct, has murdered quite a few people. His name is Clyde Forshaw and he resides in Toronto, but it appears that the Canadian police are corrupt and have no interest in his crimes, according to my source. Contact me for further information. Now that's these are replies, these are tips that Jim Fetzer submitted to the FBI. He was so troubled by her precarious position when it appeared to me that she could be killed by Clyde Forshaw at any time. I made a call to the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., and was advised to call the duty agent at the FBI office in Milwaukee, which I did. He recorded it right here. Now he was getting the runaround, exasperated that I was getting a runaround from the FBI, and I listened to this full length, all these conversations, and he definitely was on hold for a very long time. I mean, a normal person probably wouldn't have as much patience as Jim did, waiting on the line to get an answer. But he was really concerned about her well-being and wanted to get an answer out of the FBI or something. But I'm going to play this here. And this is Jim on the line waiting, I believe. But I believe he does get through, and he expresses his concerns here.
Operations, I may sister call.
Yeah, I'm calling about a person who's a witness to crimes and needs protection. It's a rather urgent matter.
Okay, is the person in the witness protection program?
No, they're not. They need to be.
Okay, we do not choose who comes into the program. That's done through the U.S. court system. I can put you in contact with the U.S. attorney in your area if you would like.
Oh, okay.
Sure, one moment. Let me pull that up.
A U.S. attorney.
Okay, what state are you located in, sir?
Pardon me?
What state are you located in?
I'm located in Wisconsin.
Okay. Okay, there's a U.S. attorney in Milwaukee, and there's one in Madison.
I'm in Madison.
Which one would you like, sir?
Madison.
Madison, okay. Do you have pen and paper ready?
Yes.
Okay, then the name of the U.S. attorney, first name is John, middle name is William, and I'm gonna try to do the last name right. Vaudreuil, and I'll spell it.
Yeah.
Vaudreuil.
Okay.
And the telephone number there is area code 608 264 5158.
264-5158. Do you have an address on them downtown or the city?
Yes, I can give that to you as well.
Yeah.
The address is 660 West Washington Avenue.
Right.
Suite number 303.
Yeah.
Madison, Wisconsin, and the zip is 53703.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't a long call here,
so
that's why I'm playing it.
The only way to get her protection is to go through the U.S. attorney.
Yes, the courts are the ones who determine whether or not somebody comes into the program or not. We do not.
Even though I'm concerned she's in imminent danger, there's nothing you can do about that.
Unless you're actually in the program, we can't really do that.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, bye-bye.
So there you go. And one thing that's questionable about this as well is if you do go into witness protection program about coming forth with information regarding some of these criminals who are working with the government or getting away with this stuff, what happens to them? I mean, a lot of times people go into witness protection program, their identities are changed, which is all the perfect way to kill somebody and eliminate them entirely from the records or anything. I mean, no sign of them. They change their name. Where are they living? Oh, that's top secret information. Well, a lot of these people who trust the government will go into witness protection programs and end up dead. So just a warning to everybody out there who does want to try to go into witness protection programs, be careful with that, for real, because, I mean, Jim Fetzer here, I could play these other calls where he's getting the runaround from the FBI and stuff, but if you guys want to check it out on your own, it's there. And he definitely gets the runaround. He's not getting through to anybody with the FBI with information regarding serial murderers and bank robbers who are on their FBI list that they're just ignoring, really. I mean, after hearing these calls, it was just insane to me. And this article here is very important to check out a bit further as well, because there's more information here I want to present to you guys. But we had further conversations that were not recorded where she was going to call me from her home after she finished dinner. It occurred to me that Clyde had said she would die when she was least expecting it. I tried to reach her to warn her that he might be waiting for her at her place and that she should enter with extreme caution. She told me she would call when she arrived, but when she didn't call, my great fear was that she was dead. She had already pointed out to me that Walter Tabinski was the person whom the CIA photographed outside the Cuban embassy as part of the scheme to frame Lee Harvey Oswald. She pointed him out to me in a series of photographs found in Robert Grodin, The Search for Lee Harvey Oswald, pages 245 to 249, as a man whom even J. Edgar Hoover himself had reported to have been impersonating Lee Harvey Oswald in Mexico City. Now, what's interesting is you have Frank Sturgis in an interview saying that there was also an Oswald impersonator. So that's something to point out, but there's a lot of information here that's pretty, I mean, this is rare information. The person that pointed me to this article suggested that I do not mention these people's names because I'm so close to them, them being from Toronto and stuff. The person suggested that I don't mention their names, but the article is here, posted on Veterans Today, with all this information for anybody who wants to check it out. And this goes on to the connection of Raul when he went to Canada and the death of Martin Luther King. There's also ties which tie a couple of these guys to the JFK assassination as well. And here we go. We have her brother Raul. This man, Roy M. Hargraves, has been substantiated from other sources. Here is a photograph from 1962 that appears to be authentic circa 1962, part of a group allegedly sponsored by the CIA at No Name Key in Florida for the purpose of overthrowing Cuba or assassinating Fidel Castro, some of whom may have been also involved in the assassination of JFK, which, as any of my listeners would know, after the interview I did with Ole Damagard not too long ago, he mentions Operation 40, which contains some of these guys in it. So, and the plan to overthrow Castro, we already went through that. Mayor Lansky, the mob was working directly with them to overthrow them. So there's a lot of stuff here. But this is very interesting article here, which there's a lot of recordings on it too, phone calls, conversations they had together. I mean, I've listened to her story. Whether I believe it's credible or not, I mean, I believe there's a lot of truth to what information was uncovered here. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, this wouldn't have even been published. I mean, Jim wouldn't have posted this. But also, here's something interesting. Right at the end of the article, comments are closed. I'll get this on screen for you guys, but it says comments are closed, and it says, I am Clyde Forshaw's youngest son. I can say for sure this is all crap. Harley was my dad's ex-girlfriend. She is crazy. She told us Paul Bernardo was stalking her before he got arrested. After her and my dad broke up, she called the cops and said he was a murderer. The cops came to her house and talked to all of my family for a few days. In the end, we were told to call them if she ever contacted us again. So basically what's happening here is this is apparently Clyde Forshaw's son, and he's saying that his dad isn't a murderer and all this stuff. But the cops go to his house and say, if she ever calls you again, call us. I mean, when they're investigating this stuff, I mean, there's all this evidence pointing towards this, and that's what happens time and time and time again. That's what happens. You identify these people, you point them out as criminals, and they get away with it. You know, the law protects them, the legal system protects them, the police protect them, the government protects them. These people are protected, and that's why they get away with it. That's exactly why they get away with it. because they're protected. And the legal system exists to create confusion. I mean, a lot of people can't even represent themselves in court. They get a representative who presents them because they're being represented in court by a lawyer. They don't represent themselves. They get a lawyer involved because the lawyer knows a bit more about the legal system than they do. But the whole legal system itself is a giant spider's web. That's what it is. It's a spider's web. If you know how to get out of it, you'll get out of it. If you don't, then you're trapped in there. You're going to get cocooned up, and all the juices and all the life sucked out of you. And the juices in the life is your cash, your liveliness, your well-being, your name, your credibility. All this stuff goes against you when you get charged in court. Now, I see people going to court and getting imprisoned for smoking a joint, or, having a little bit of marijuana because it cures them for whatever ailment they have, because the research is out there. Look it up, people. Cannabis cures a lot of things. It acts as a treatment for many illnesses and diseases, and it's commonly used for those purposes. It's even prescribed medicinally in many places around the world. But still, you could still go to jail if you have a little bit of pot on you, right? But these people are murdering people, contract killers, getting paid thousands and thousands and thousands, if not millions of dollars for murdering people, and they get away with it. They have multiple aliases, more than one name, to cover up their identities. It's all espionage tactics that I'm sure you're all well aware of that's going on here. So I also wanted to show you guys another article here, very good article, which points out a lot of the marriage between the mafia and the government. And this was also on Veterans Today, a Jim Fetzer article, and unexpected links in the murders of JFK, John Lennon, and Olof Palme, who was the Prime Minister of Sweden. And there's interviews on here that you could play and listen to with Ole Damergaard, who was a guest I had on a few weeks back, who was an amazing guest. He really laid it all out on the table. A lot of really good, crucial information he explained. And this article here was written by Ole and submitted to him for the website, which explains a lot of it. And I'm going to read this article for you guys because it names names. And this is the source I go to reference Operation 40 because it's very in-depth here. But we are living in a time of great change and lots of information never seen before get uncovered. I would like to join this positive trend by showing some more or less unknown connections between many major assassinations. The implications of these connections are enormous. Just before the Bay of Pigs invasion, a super secret special team of skilled killers was put together under the name Operation 40. One of the leaders of the group was CIA's David Atlee Phillips, a key player in the plot against JFK. Definitely. Who's also known as Maurice Bishop. It is now clear that he, among other things, was the so-called controller and handler of none less than the patsy Lee Harvey Oswald, as well as being the controller of one of the shooters, the man behind the fence on the grassy knoll, James Files. And one broadcast I'm really looking forward to coming up in the next few weeks is an interview with Judith Very Baker, who wrote the book Me and Lee, How I Came to Know, Love, and Lose Lee Harvey Oswald. And here's the book for you guys. I would suggest if people want to read it's an easier book to read because it's not so technical and the text is rather large, I guess. So it's an easier read to get through, but it really lays it out on what happened in New Orleans with the JFK assassination and Lee Harvey Oswald, how he was sheep dipped essentially and set up as the patsy for the crime. Now, I'm really looking forward to having her on the show to discuss this book with me in detail because it coincides with the information here that Ole Damergaard also uncovered with his book Coup d'etat in Slow Motion, which I definitely recommend others to check that book out as well if they can get a copy. I don't think it's been published yet. People are too afraid to publish it, but you can get it online for a smaller fee. This book is really good. She's also working on another book about David Ferrie, who was also had connections with the espionage community as well as the mafia. He was a mafia pilot and stuff like that. So she's getting ready to release her second book. But this book here is really good. It's a really good book. It's written very differently but it has a lot of information that coincides with this article, and I'm really looking forward to having her on the show. I think you guys are really going to love that episode. So anybody out there who has the time, check it out. It'll be on February 15th, I believe is the date we go to broadcast. I'm just going to verify that though. Sorry, February 8th. Saturday, February 8th is the date that I'll have Judith Baker on the show to be discussing her books. And she's going to lay it on the table too about how it's all organized, like the mafia and the government are in bed together pretty much. So back to the article here. It is now clear that he, among other things, was also the handler of Lee Harvey Oswald and the controller of one of the shooters, the man behind the fence on the grassy knoll, James Files. Now, in the film that I made about JFK, How to Kill a President, I also named James Files as the shooter behind the fence because the details he gives to people are very bang on, and there's other people that also say that he was the person there. Let me see here. But he was also the handler of young Michael Vernon Townley, later to become a notorious assassin involved in many extremely violent assignments, one of which, according to my 30 years of research, was the Olof Palme assassination. For more information, please read my book, Coup d'etat in Slow Motion, which can be purchased from my website, lightonconspiracies.com. So anybody interested in getting the book, get it from that website right there. This cold-blooded killer was active very early in his life. In the late 1960s, David Atlee Phillips, backed by Henry Kissinger, sent Michael Townley to Chile with many covert tasks, one of them organizing covert groups to take part of the overthrow of President Salvador Allende. Two of the group members were the killers, Roberto Tiem and Julio Izquierdo Menendez, both on location with Townley at the time of the Olof Palme hit in February '86. Operation 40 and its evil spiderweb. Operation 40 was a CIA-sponsored undercover operation started in early 60s, which was to become active in the United States and the Caribbean, including Cuba, Central America, and Mexico, as well as Europe and South Africa. Allen Dulles, very famous name there, the director of the CIA, established Operation 40 after a confidential memorandum for Colonel King, chief of CIA's Western Hemisphere Division. It obtained its name because originally there were 40 agents involved, mainly Cuban exiles. So these Cuban exiles, Judith Baker describes in her book, because they were being trained in New Orleans, and they had ties there, big time. It says here, it was approved by President Dwight Eisenhower and was presided over by Vice President Richard Nixon. So that says that they were involved as well. George Herbert Walker Bush, which is senior, was asked to cooperate in funding the group. The man assigned to him for his new mission was Felix Rodriguez, very famous name in espionage activities. This included finding private funding as a result of pressure from American corporations which had suffered at the hands of Fidel Castro. So as we discussed, when Castro took over, he abolished the crime racket. He made it a more social place to live. And he had a lot of support, which is why he remained their leader for so long, is because he had support. He was even very good friends with Nelson Mandela, who was a very huge humanitarian. Once member Frank Sturgis, who I already named earlier as one of the Watergate burglars, allegedly told author Mike Canfield the assassination group would, upon orders, naturally assassinate either members of the military or the political parties of the foreign country that you were going to overthrow or infiltrate, and if necessary, some of your own members who were suspected of being foreign agents, which he was. The members of Operation 40 have kept themselves very busy and are involved in the murders of John Lennon, Che Guevara, President Salvador Allende, Nobel Prize-winning poet Pablo Neruda, Orlando Letelier, General Carlos Prats, South African Robert Smith, the 1976 bombing of a Cuban airliner that killed 73 people, and the Watergate burglary, the Iran-Contra scandal, and even 9/11 and onwards. There's many, many, many crimes that have been committed that these people are guilty of by association or just by their involvement and the evidence that supports that. Even attempts to kill the French president Charles de Gaulle and the murder of Italian Enrico Mattei have been mentioned, not to forget several hundred people that have died in mysterious ways in connection with the JFK murder. Definitely. Who killed them? Let's take a closer look at this highly sinister group, which has left a long trail of bloodstains throughout modern history. And please keep in mind who was and is in charge, because that will supply some important clues to guilty parties and other top assassinations and so-called terror acts. We will find that many of them are still around. Here is the only known photograph of some of the members of Operation 40, the CIA's super-secret assassination squad, taken in the Mexico City nightclub La Reforma, January 1963. To the left with glasses is Porter Goss. Barry Seal is sealed next to him. Very well-known name right there in organized crime, CIA. Leaning over the table, laughing, is Felix Rodriguez. The fourth from the right is said to be Jorgo Rebenzo. And third, Alberto Loco Bianco. Covering his face with his sport coat is Tosh Plumley. And to the far right is William Seymour. Tosh Plumley as well is a well-known name. I believe he's a pilot for the CIA who's involved in many operations. David Atlee Phillips, a.k.a. Howard Benson, the head of Operation 40, central in countless covert operations, including the hit on JFK. He rose to become the CIA's chief of all operations in the Western Hemisphere. Now this guy here, definite ties to organized crime, assassinations, CIA, all that stuff. Big name right here. Theodore Blonde Ghost Shackley, station chief of CIA's Miami station, a 3-time recipient of the Distinguished Intelligence Medal, the CIA's highest honor. In nearly 3 decades of service, he was on the front lines. According to conspiracy expert Trowbridge Ford, Ted Shackley was also head of a team who killed Uwe Barshel. In addition, he is pointed out as to taking part in planning the murder of John Lennon, carried out by his colleague Jose Perdomo. That's Ted Shackley. Now, this is David Morales, E. Howard Hunt, a frontline CIA supervisor for the Kennedy assassination and many, many other covert operations, including the Watergate burglary. Now, many of you might remember his deathbed confession in regards to the JFK assassination. He was featured on the Jesse Ventura conspiracy theory show when he came forth and admitted this on his deathbed. His son, he told the deathbed confession to his son. I believe even Alex Jones covered it. I mean, Jim Mars also was there during the uncovering, during the deathbed confession. But he was also one of the plumbers for the Watergate scandal. So he's another big name, E. Howard Hunt. He's since died, but he gave out a lot of secrets before he did die, which is important to look into as well. But David Morales, this guy here, definitely one of the most deadly guys that worked for the CIA. He had his hands dirty in many operations, deeply involved in the CIA covert operation that overthrew President Guzman of Guatemala, acquired a reputation as CIA's top assassin in Latin America. Through the 1960s and mid-70s, Morales was involved at top levels in projects and plots to assassinate Fidel Castro, the Bay of Pigs invasion operation, the JFK assassination, the CIA's secret war in Laos, the capture of Che Guevara and his real killer, and the overthrow of Salvador Allende. So he's also has ties and connections to the Robert Kennedy assassination. So that's another big one there. Stories about him permeated the agency. Remembered CIA agent Tom Clines. If the U.S. government, as a matter of policy, needed someone or something neutralized, Dave would do it, including things that were repugnant to a lot of people. And I know he was responsible for, co-responsible. I'm not sure if he was the actual one who did it, but I believe he's the one who killed Che Guevara. I know he was definitely involved with the death of him and is guilty by association in that matter. In November 2006, BBC's Newsnight presented a report by filmmaker Shane O'Sullivan alleging that 3 senior CIA operatives were present at the Ambassador Hotel at the night Robert Kennedy was assassination. JM Wave Chief of Operations David Morales, Chief of Maritime Operations Gordon Campbell, and Chief of Psychological Warfare Operations George Juanidias. And that documentary is called RFK Must Die. So, looks like we got disconnected there, folks. Sorry about that. That would be the second time tonight that I've been disconnected. If you haven't noticed, maybe the screen went black. I'm glad to see that people are still with the show. We're all connected. Good stuff. Thumbs up. Awesome. Because I hate that when that happens. get disconnected. It freezes up. But as I was saying, I just read the paragraph here. I hope you guys got that about Shane O'Sullivan, who made that film. And there was a report in 2006 on BBC which had Shane O'Sullivan on there discussing the information that he found. But at the same time, the documentary it doesn't list on here, it's called RFK Must Die. So there's a documentary about that which has where the filmmaker Shane O'Sullivan believes that David Morales, Gordon Campbell, and George Juanitez were the ones were there and present during the assassination of Robert Kennedy. It's a great film, but later Shane recanted, saying that he doesn't think that they were there, which is very strange to me, because it seemed like the evidence was just overwhelming there. Definitely something that's worth looking into. That film again is called RFK Must Die. For those of you who want a new documentary to watch, that's very revealing. So I'm going to get back to the article here quickly. And somebody said, whatever happened to Diane Reedy in the chat room. Diane Reedy, not sure what happened to her now. I know that she was hauled out of there and, brought to a doctor's to seek mental help after her outburst, which the media covered up what she said at the podium. Reading between the lies, the Diane Reedy clip is still available on the Unveiling the Truth website. They didn't take that one down. They took down the Rob Ford one that I did. And I haven't done another Reading Between the Lies segment, but the Diane Reedy thing, I know her husband went on a radio show and discussed what happened. It would be great to try to get Diane on the show, but I don't think she's going to. I think she got burned, I guess you could say, as a warning, don't do this again, because they took her away and administrated her. I'm sure by now that she's pretty scared for her life to do something else. I mean, I would hope not. I'd hope she had the courage to come forth and do radio interviews. But, it'd be great to try to get a hold of her and see what happened. And for those out there who are watching, there is a clip on Unveiling the Truth called Reading Between the Lies, the Diane Reedy Cover-Up. And that's REIDY. So anybody who's not sure what happened there, check out that video. It's very revealing. But for those quickly who don't know, she's the one who stood up apparently and started talking about the Freemasons during the government shutdown, and she was hauled out and brought to a hospital to seek psychiatric evaluation. So that's what is going on. That's one way they deal with people when they know too much or they speak out too much. That's one way they can deal with you, is take you away and drug you, do what they can. And then when you leave, you're not the same person, or you're scared and you won't talk anymore, because these people rule off of fear. As you could tell, these really blatant criminals who are working with the government as assassins and stuff like that, and getting away with it and covering it up and stuff like that, they're also responsible for a bit of that fear level that exists within people, because they're scared, because a lot of people have communities. In their community, a lot of people have organized crime. I mean, there's gangs in a lot of communities, whether it be a small street gang or a more organized, large national gang. There is a lot of organized crime within different communities, not only here in Canada, but also in the United States. It's definitely crazy. So a lot of people do fear, because they might know people that are in these clubs or whatever. So a lot of people might fear about speaking out against stuff. I mean, for the most part, a lot of these smaller gangs aren't going so far overboard, I guess, if they're just a small one. They're just doing drug dealing, making a little bit of money on the side and stuff like that, which is still a crime and stuff like that. But it's the assassins, the people that are killing lots of people or enticing wars, or that are, making people sick without them knowing about it, without their consent, through the stuff they're putting in the food. It's kind of those sneaky, covert criminal operations, I guess, that I'm trying to expose here on the show today. So that's crazy stuff. But I got to get back to this article here, just to finish this one, because it does name a lot more names of people that you guys will be familiar with, who's complicit with a lot of crimes, and who should be charged, but a lot of them won't be charged because they're going to wait till these people are dead and gone before they'll release the information. But the program featured an interview with Morales' former attorney, Robert Walton, who quoted Morales as having said, "I was in Dallas when we got the son of a bitch, and I was in Los Angeles when we got the little bastard," talking about JFK and RFK. So the CIA definitely had a say in that, for sure. Felix Rodriguez Mendigueta, former Cuban cop under the Batista regime, a notorious freedom fighter who later became a key Iran-Contra operative, was a special confidant of President George Herbert Walker Bush, was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and later involved in much of the illegal drug handling around the Mina airstrip in Arkansas, together with Bill Clinton, George Bush, and Barry Seal, among others, as well as being in charge of the capture and execution of Che Guevara. So that's who did it. That's who was the executor. Since 2004, president of the Bay of Pigs Veterans Association. There we go. Frank Fiorini, a.k.a. Frank Sturgis, who I mentioned earlier. There's lots of interviews and videos of him on YouTube. Check it out if you have the time. But he was a CIA operative, a mercenary, heavily involved in planned attacks on Fidel Castro, the Bay of Pigs invasion, the JFK assassination, and later a member of the team that broke into the Watergate complex in '72. He was also involved in many other operations. Orlando Bosch, founder of the Counter-Revolutionary Coordination of United Revolutionary Organizations that organized the 1976 murder of Chilean former minister Orlando Lettier with a car bomb in Washington, D.C. Bosch was also present in Dallas at the JFK assassination, as well as guilty of hundreds of bombs and terror acts against Spain, England, Japan, Mexico, Poland, and other countries that traded with Cuba. Barry Seal was recruited at the age of 17 along with Lee Oswald by CIA agent David Ferry. According to his wife, Deborah, Barry Seal flew a getaway plane out of Dallas after JFK was killed. Barry Seal was a very successful cocaine smuggler and helped facilitate the exchange of drugs for arms in support of the Contras in Nicaragua. He also helped launder that drug money in some of the Arkansas banks tied to the Bill Clinton family. Seal was later willing to testify against George Bush in the matter and was shot dead in his car on 19th of February 1986, just a few days before Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme was taken out. Very, very peculiar detail right there. Luis Albambi Pasado Carriles, Cuban-born anti-communist extremist, CIA agent involved in the Bay of Pigs invasion and many other covert operations, was present in Dallas on 22nd November 1963, convicted in absentia in Panama of various terrorist attacks and plots of the Americas. So he didn't show up to court and was convicted in his absence. That's what that means. Including the 1976 bombing of a Cuban airliner that killed 73 people, admitted involvement in a string of bombings in 1997 that targeted fashionable Cuban hotels and night spots. This is a long video here. This is David Sanchez Morales. This is where he's indicated as a CIA member, identified as being at the RFK assassination at the Ambassador Hotel. And here, these are other key figures. Bradley Ayers, former U.S. captain assigned to JM Wave, identifying David Morales at the Ambassador. That's who. That's the video right there that you're seeing. A key figure in the Iran-Contra scandal, longtime Felix Rodriguez. In addition, he was jailed under accusations related to an assassination attempt on Fidel Castro in Panama in 2000. So that's how recent they've been trying to kill him. Has been referred to as one of the most dangerous terrorists in recent history and the godfather of Cuban exile violence. Porter Goss, later appointed to CIA director by President Bush, only to mysteriously resign. He served for a time as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Goss was a co-sponsor of the U.S. Patriot Act and a co-chair of the Joint 9/11 Intelligence Inquiry. Goss was also present at the infamous breakfast meeting at the Capitol on the morning of September 11, 2001 with General Mahmoud Ahmad, head of the Pakistani ISI, Inter Services Intelligence. Marita Lorenz, Operation 40's only female member, had an affair with Fidel Castro, and in January 1960 was part in an assassination attempt on his life. She later had a child with the Venezuelan former dictator Marcos Perez Jimenez. In the 70s, she testified about the John F. Kennedy assassination, stating that she was involved with a group of anti-Cuban militants, including Lee Harvey Oswald, shortly before the assassination. Tosh Plumley, piloted and co-piloted clandestine CIA flights for over 31 years, picked up Johnny Rosselli from Tampa, Florida, early on 22nd of November 1963. After picking up 3 more men in New Orleans, Plumlee took them to Redbird Airport in Dallas. In an interview in April 1992, Plumlee claimed that he was told that the objective was to abort the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And these are some other main players here. And I think the rest here is mainly pictures with a few other ones. Oh no, it does go on for a while. I'm just going to name the names though, because that's really what's important is to name these names for you guys so you know. Hermino Diaz Garcia worked as a bodyguard for mafia boss Santos Trafficante, killed Pipi Hernandez in 1948 at the Cuban consulate in Mexico. In 1957, he was involved with an assassination attempt against President Jose Figueres of Costa Rica. Diaz Garcia was also part of an unsuccessful attempt to assassinate Fidel Castro. Diaz Garcia moved to the United States in July 1963, where he worked for Tony Verona, another infamous member of Operation 40, believed to be one of the shooters and spotters on the 6th floor in the Texas Schoolbook Depository of Dallas. Handsome Johnny Rosselli, middleman between the mob and the CIA, worked with mob figures like Al Capone in the 20s. So he's a very key figure, Johnny Rosselli, in linking the mob with the CIA. Mayor Lansky, whom I discussed earlier, and was later associate of Santos Trafficante, is said to have been in the Daltex building when JFK was shot next to shooter Charles Nicoletti and George Herbert Walker Bush. Ended up cut into pieces, stuffed in an oil barrel, and in an interview in April 1992, Tosh Plumlee claimed that Rosselli had been killed because he knew too much. So that's what happens when you know too much. You get chopped up into little pieces and stuffed into an oil barrel. That's why people are scared to come forward about this stuff, and that's why these people get away with this. Virgilio Paz Romero, member of the Cuban nationalist movement, sentenced to 12 years in prison on 12th September 1991 for the assassination of Orlando Lettier in Washington, D.C. Dionisio Suarez, James Files, Guillermo and Ignacio Nova, and Alvin Ross Diaz were also implicated by CIA and DINA operative Michael Townley. Both George H.W. Bush and Henry Kissinger have later been directly connected to this hideous act of terror. Paz was also pointed out as being part of the Robert Smith murder in South Africa and the assassinations of General Carlos Prats in Chile, Minister of Defense Oscar Bonillo, and the Italian hit on Bernardo Leighton and his wife. So this is international killers here. These people work internationally through the CIA and other groups which help protect them, essentially, is what's going on. And these people get away with it. I mean, I haven't heard of any of these people serving any time for any of these crimes that they've done. And this definitely is pretty good information here. What Ole Damagard has done is he's definitely tied together a lot of these pieces in his book. And also this article here. He definitely... Well, sorry folks. Got disconnected yet again. Third time. Third time's a charm, as I say. So sorry about that for all you viewers out there who saw a black spot or black screen for a bit. I do apologize. It's not my fault. My connection is getting cut off pretty bad here tonight, it seems. And that was kind of expected, actually, considering the week that I've had with computer problems and getting disconnected from interviews and all that stuff. So I do apologize, folks. But as I was saying, Ole Damagard, with the information that he's compiled, not only in this article, but in his book, Coup d'etat in Slow Motion, definitely names a lot of key figures. Definitely. Tons of key figures. And it's the same thing, right? These people are getting away with it. And one person in the chat room said, follow the money. And you're absolutely right. These people, it's a job for them. They're getting paid for this stuff. They're getting paid to keep their mouths shut. They're getting paid to kill these people. And they're getting paid very well. So that's why they're doing it. And the world sort of breeds people like this. I mean, one thing I've noticed is a lot of people nowadays, especially younger kids even, they're getting more into violence at a younger age because that's what's available to them as entertainment. Everything's got a gun on it. Everything's got, a good guy and a bad guy. There's always the duality of the good guy versus the bad guy. And that's the way a lot of these people have tried to, justify what they're doing, to justify the crimes that they're committing, is saying, oh, we're doing it for a good cause. I mean, is it really a good cause to murder somebody? There should be no excuses for that. You shouldn't have to murder somebody. You shouldn't have to kill somebody. I mean, there's other ways of dealing with it, which are more humane and appropriate ways of dealing with it. You throw them in prison. You know what I mean? You do certain things like that. They get charged. They get their riches and their finances taken away. There's all sorts of humane ways of dealing with criminals, but follow the money. Absolutely right. I mean, money can buy the best lawyer you could possibly want. And that's one way they get away with it, through the legal system. And then the lawyer gets paid so much money, he buys off the judge. Bribes, buyouts, all these things have been happening for quite some time now. And that's another reason these people are allowed to get away with it. Absolutely. But also, when the courts and the legal systems turn a blind eye. That's a big quote of the episode today, turning a blind eye. That's what's happening in the Kelly Thomas case. The legal system and a lot of people are turning a blind eye there. Same with the JFK assassination. People have turned a blind eye to that. People have turned a blind eye in all sorts of instances. I mean, look at Jim Fetzer calling the FBI to try to report crimes, murders, and robberies, and try to get one of these most wanted off the list. But to no avail. They don't listen to him. They just say, "Oh, those calls." You really got to listen to those calls on that article, because it's crazy. He's calling and they're giving him the runaround and saying that there's no FBI agent that's really interested to talk to him because it's after 11 o'clock p.m. That was the one thing that he said that really struck me, was when they said, "Oh, it's 11 o'clock here," you know what I mean? There's nobody going to be around to take your call. And he's saying that somebody's life is being threatened and they need to be put in the witness protection program. And the FBI is like, "Call back in the morning, it's 11 o'clock. That's insane. Insanity. But that's what's going to happen. If you have real credible information about any of this stuff, and you go to the government, you go to the FBI, those are government organizations. In Canada here, it would be the RCMP, or it would be CSIS. But they would turn a blind eye, because that's what they do. They're taught to turn a blind eye. So that's... The legal system obviously isn't going to do justice. In a lot of cases, it's not going to. It's just a shenanigan. It's a big show. That's what it is. It's a big show. You're in the courtroom. It's like a court. Like you're in a basketball game. You're in a basketball court. You're playing a game is what you're doing when you go to court. So I wouldn't be gambling and going to court because it's obviously not going to work, right? I don't want to use this reference or anything, but look what happened to Mussolini. I mean, the people had justice. They killed him, and he was shot during the war, but they paraded his body through the streets and hung it upside down for everyone to see. But it's another interesting thing is, if you look at the Mussolini videos from when he was strung up publicly, there's a female there, and her skirt falls down, and they got all these bodies hanging out in the middle for everybody to see, hanging up publicly, and somebody had the decency, because the girl's skirt fell down, to pin it between her legs so that it wouldn't fall down. They're fine displaying mutilated, torn up bodies hanging from the gas station that they were hanging from, but it's another thing to have a girl's skirt fall down. They got to pin that up. That's kind of funny in my opinion. It's strange, but I wouldn't say we need a lynching either. I'm not condoning a lynching, because, as I said, you don't need to kill somebody. Like, that's definitely not the appropriate way to do it. But if there isn't another way for people to calmly and humanely figure out how to deal with these criminals that are operating in the government, then they're just going to keep getting away with it. And people have had enough. People have had enough with letting these people get away with this stuff, and they know what's going on. They're starting to piece things together, and they're starting to say, okay, well, maybe these people are criminals. I mean, they have to be and able to get away with all these crimes that I presented to you in this presentation today. They have to be criminals getting away with this stuff, because none of these people, none of them have served any time in prison. None of them have been executed for their crimes. None of these people have been charged. When they do go to court, they get let off. They don't. Their fines get paid by other organizations. I mean, money is nothing to these people. So you could throw them in court and charge them all you want because it's just a laugh. Like, it's actually profit for them. It's a profitable industry, the court system. You pay fines and you pay all this stuff and you agree to do that. That's what it is. You're signing the agreement. Okay, I'll take this. I'll take a jail sentence, or I'll take a fine. Yes, okay, I agree. Your lawyer agrees to the terms, yada yada. You sign it off, and that's what you do. Your life is controlled in the court system. So it's not going to work, you know. I think that people like George Bush Jr., George Bush Sr., who are alive today, should be held accountable and brought to prison. That's what I think. I think that if a trial were to be held, then the same thing would happen. These people would get off on a technicality, or they would get fines, or they would get a 10-year prison sentence and then serve 9 months and leave, like Frank Sturgis did. I mean, that's what's happening. These people are getting away with it, and it's up to us to discuss this, to know the truth, to get the truth out there for people to know about, and then discuss it. I mean, you could say what's done in the past is what's done in the past. That's what these people are hoping for. These people are hoping to die old so that nothing gets out. They can't be held accountable for what crimes they did. And they'll go down in the history books as being evil people if the truth gets out. But if not, these people are going to go in the history books with lies, which is what's happened for a very long time. Those people who are writing the history books definitely put a lot of fiction in there, because a lot of this stuff, I mean, when you believe the official story, I'm not saying that it's all untrue, but I'm definitely saying there's a lot more to these key events that have happened, especially these criminal-related offenses. I mean, O.J. Simpson getting away, the Kelly Thomas, there's all these. You got James Holmes and the Aurora shooting. You've got all the anomalies with Sandy Hook. You've got the Boston bombing anomalies, the airport. You've got all these things happening, and just very strange stuff, and people aren't believing it anymore, which is awesome, because that's what it's going to take. General public awareness. This needs to become common sense, where everybody knows it. It's common sense that criminals run the government. And I mean, I wouldn't say that all members of government are criminals. Definitely not, because there is a lot of people in government now that are fighting to make changes, that have good policies and good visions for the future, and they're trying everything they can to protect our rights and freedoms, which is good. I'm glad there is people in the government that are trying that. But for the most part, you have all these people that are in government, and they've been sworn to secrecy through whatever, and when they do see something happen, nothing gets done. So in reality, they're all guilty by association, or conspiring to cover up facts and information and documents and data and all that stuff. So when you have that happening, the only people that can really change that information are those on the inside. So that's what I'm saying. When all these files are being destroyed or go missing, they're not releasing files to the public, they're not releasing information to the public. I mean, that's what's going on. It's getting destroyed so that the truth will never get out there. And there's evidence, and that's what we need, is evidence. Otherwise, people will think you're a crackpot. But at the same time, you could just feel it in your gut, right? You could just feel it in your gut when something's wrong, and that is important as well, because that's a hunch will lead you to the discovery of evidence, which is what all these independent researchers are doing. They're going by their hunches, looking and digging for the truth, and then they find the information that contributes or essentially makes their case strong, and that's what we need, really. For those of you watching, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the documentary I made, The James Holmes Conspiracy, and I think there's a lot of evidence and information in there saying that he wasn't the one who did it, and that's just another thing that they're going to write about in history books. That's false, really. But we need to get the truth out there. We need to know what's going on and how these people operate, and then thwart that system, really, is what's going on. And I mean, a lot of people out there are fine with getting paid money to hush, because money is what their life exists around. They're fine with that. They're fine with going to witness protection programs, for doing something even though nothing happens. You know what I mean? A lot of people have went into the witness protection program and disappeared forever because it's run by the same unit. So just a warning out there. Anybody out there who wants to seek protection for, having information regarding some of these people or crimes that have been committed, or agents of the government that are murdering people, assassinating people, or that are involved with this kind of covert espionage activity, be careful who you talk to about this stuff, because it's very, very, it's like you're walking on glass. You know what I mean? You got to be very careful with who you present this information to. I would suggest going to independent broadcasters or anybody and getting your story out, screaming as loud as you can on the top of that mountain so that more people hear you, and then it'll be harder to silence you. That's one of the best ways to do it. And sometimes you got to work underground before you can get to that point. You got to work on the D-low, I guess you could say, so that you're not drawing a lot of attention, and then come out with the information when you have enough spotlight on you, because that's important. They don't want to make martyrs out of people. They don't want to kill people off when they have credible information. So that's one thing you got to take into account. But I'm not worried. I don't live in fear. I mean, I want to get this information out to you guys as much as possible and name as many names as I possibly can, with the help of independent researchers like Ole Damagard and James Fetzer and all these other people like Shane O'Sullivan. And there's all these awesome independent investigators out there who are revealing this information to the public and getting this information out there without fear. I mean, that's what's really important, is we are getting this information and we are making some headway with this. I think more and more people are learning about this every day, and that's the important thing, is getting this information out, no holds barred. So I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight on Unveiling the Truth while we spoke about criminals in government. Hopefully I presented you guys a lot of evidence showing that there's something going on that we need to look at, and it's still going on today, as you could see with the more recent examples. This isn't going to go away. In fact, I think the truth is just going to come out eventually, and it's going to snowball. It's going to be more and more truth coming out, and it's going to be really shocking. But the truth is usually shocking when it comes to this kind of stuff. So again, thank you guys for watching. I want to thank everybody in the chat room for sticking around and tuning in. Next week's episode, we have an awesome episode with the host for the Enemy Within radio, which is on Truth Frequency Radio, and I have both hosts of that show, Tom Barnes and Tommy Blackhat, joining me. So it's going to be like a three-way interview conversation. I'm going to be interviewed for their show, and they're being interviewed on my show. So it's going to be hitting two birds with one stone, reaching as much more people as we possibly can during that broadcast. So tune in next week for Enemy Within radio hosts, Tom Barnes and Tommy Blackhats. They're from the UK, so I look forward to speaking to them about the atmosphere there in the UK, and the royal family and all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned next week for another awesome episode of Unveiling the Truth, and the truth will set us free. Peace, everybody.